Hi MTC artists, welcome to your third edition of Art Outside the Classroom. My name is Jenna Miller and today we'll be talking about frottage monoprinting. So those are two very big words. Let's break it down for you. Frottage is actually the act of taking a rubbing of something. You can do this with a piece of paper and some tree bark, anything with texture, and taking a crayon or charcoal or pencil and rubbing it on top of and seeing the texture that you make. In this case, we'll be doing it with paint. And monoprinting is a type of printmaking. Printmaking normally deals with a plate and some paper in many reproductions, one after the other, and they all look alike. This is how your books are made in text. But in monoprinting, only one copy is made. That's because you cannot make more copies as they will never be the same. So keep in mind this lesson that we are being flexible with our materials. Just because you don't have white paint or any type of paint doesn't mean that you will be unable to do this lesson. Get creative. Use some crayons. Use some food coloring. Use some colored pencils. I guarantee you have something to make this work. As for cardstock, play around with different things. Sometimes cardstock might actually peel up. We need to be flexible with how we handle our materials and learn from it. Maybe use cardboard instead. Maybe you just make layers and layers of torn pieces of paper. Either way, anything will work. I just encourage you to be flexible with your materials and get creative on this kind of stuff. Let me know what works. For today's project, you will need a piece of cardstock, a couple pieces of paper of different colors, some scissors, a glue stick, some paint, and a paintbrush. We'll start by making the plate we will be printing with. Go ahead and fold your paper in half, hamburger style, and make a nice deep crease down the middle. That way, when we open it back up, we will have two equal halves. You can take a pair of scissors and cut right down the center, being careful to make a nice, clean, straight line. Next, we will be cutting the elements that will be glued onto our plate. These are the elements that will create texture when we brush paint over them. You can choose any design to cut out of this separate piece of paper. I chose triangles. These are an easy way to snip off different shapes of different sizes and be nice and clean with your cuts. I recommend you trying this, but also organic shapes like swirls and spirals and circles will be very, very nice as well. You don't need too many of these pieces of paper, just as long as you have some of different sizes, big and small. Make sure you exaggerate these shapes. Now we're ready to assemble our plate. Take a glue stick or any other glue will work as long as you have enough time for it to dry, and start brushing it on, especially making sure to cover those corners. You see I didn't use too much. Go ahead and start arranging the composition you want. It's hard to see in this video, but I'm gluing these down and what they'll end up doing is actually overlapping in some spots. Don't be afraid to have things build and overlap on top of each other. Keep gluing and building until you're happy about your final design. You can always build more than one plate if you have extra time. So when you're finished, give your plate a good final pat down. Again, get those edges to stick all the way. Here, now you can see the texture a little bit better of the plate that I created. We will now be inking up our plate. So instead of ink, of course, we will be using paint. I'm choosing white acrylic paint. But really you could use anything. You could even do a rubbing of this with crayon if you did not have paint available. But I'm making sure to get those corners again and brush a good amount of paint on this plate. Really, you can get a good amount on there and then smooth it out, making sure that there's not big blobs. Take a peek at your plate from the side to see whether or not there are some big shiny areas or not. Now I'm picking it up delicately, trying to avoid getting my fingerprints on the top of it, and I'm hovering it over on the paper that I'm trying to print on. Get it nice and centered and drop it on. The trick is not to fuss with it too much. I'm getting those sides pressed down. Those are the most important part to me, is making sure we have those nice crisp lines. Let's pat it down gently, making sure that we will get that final texture from lifting off our plate. And then go ahead, grab a corner and peel it all the way back very gently and see what your finished product is. Notice how different textures have been achieved. You can see the brush stroke, which is very, very cool. You see, in the areas that are dark, the paint did not get into. That was because they were raised up. And remember guys, this is monoprinting, so each time you print will be completely different. I encourage you to experiment and try many plates. Here's our finished product. Another cool thing you can do is work on how you display and present your artwork. In this version, I've chose to matte our print in a black matte. It looks very crisp and handsome like this. For our next presentation selection, I decided to matte our work in a thick white matte that gave our print plenty of space to breathe. I cropped in on my favorite areas. I think this is ready to hang on our walls and enjoy. Thanks guys, join me next time.